into Action panel. And this panel, as Mary introduced, is the one, and a lot of people were already talking about it, that we do annually, and it's really about hearing everyone's personal journey with their grief. And I think Rebecca said it really well, creating an individual legacy in different ways. And you'll hear that from, and I wrote it down verbatim when she said it, because it really summarizes what this panel is about each year. And, I love hearing this panel because I've heard people in the audience put these ideas into action. And I see someone here who's done that, from someone who shared an idea that, he did, and I see her smiling at me, with, using free billboards to educate about SUDEP. And then she went to her hometown in Pittsburgh area and was like, hey, let me try this out. And she was able to do it. So, here are some ideas that people have done. And if you're thinking about, what can I do? Or maybe you're trying to, see how you can grow your ideas and things, these are going to be some ideas from individuals who have, put their grief into action. So you can learn from them and hear from their personal stories. So as Mary did, I will introduce all of them, and then they can come up. So we first have Shelley and Shane Hutchinson. They formed the Addison Hutchinson Foundation after the loss of their daughter, Addison, to SUDEP, August 8th, 2019. Since then, along with a group of dedicated friends, they've used their foundation to not only spread awareness and contribute to research around epilepsy and SUDEP, but have also helped to enrich the lives of children in their community and beyond. The foundation's slogan, "Happy days are the best days," is a message that was written on Addison's whiteboard and a reminder that her spirit lives on. So we're excited to have them with us. Tara Rogers, who was very eager to speak and tried to sneak up on the first panel, if you saw her. She has been involved in the epilepsy world since shortly after her daughter passed away on May 1st, 2023. Tara and her family have been actively involved in raising money for the Epilepsy Foundation and Cassie's Foundation, the Epilepsy Field of Sunflower Foundation, in memory of Cassie Nicole Slevin. As a mother, she is trying to help raise awareness of epilepsy and SUDEP for families with little to no knowledge of the outcome, hoping to make a difference in others' lives. In her spare time, she loves photography and traveling. And then last but not least, we have Maddie Hildebrandt Bush, who became involved with the Danny Did Foundation in honor of her sister Kate, who passed away unexpectedly from SUDEP in 2022. Supporting their mission allows her to raise awareness, share her family's story, and help ensure others have access to education resources that they did not. As a sister and a mom, she's committed to turning their loss into advocacy and action. She feels it's a privilege to be part of this community working towards change. And I was very excited to be part of Team Danny Did's marathon team with her in Chicago this past October. So I'm excited to have our panel. And right before we get started, I do want to share, I realized we did not share really important information about the bathrooms. The bathrooms are downstairs, so just use the escalators. They are not on the same floor if you haven't found them yet. And also, Frank, we should have had you play at the welcome reception tonight with your band. We totally, missed that opportunity. So with that, I will turn it over to Shane and Shelley and hand you the clicker.
That's a lot of power.
A lot of power there. I trust you.
Okay. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shane Hutchison, and my wife, Shelley. We are first bereaved parents, and we also started the Addison Hutchison Foundation after our daughter, Addison. So before we can start with the story of our foundation, let's start with the story of Addison. She had seizures day one. She was taken to the NICU. She was there for several days. When she did have seizures, they usually occurred in clusters of two. About 4 months old, after a couple of fairly long seizures, she was hospitalized. And in talking to all those doctors, SUDEP never came up. Then fast forward to the age of 3, we changed doctors, we changed meds a couple of times, had some more EEGs. Guess what still didn't come up? SUDEP. So after age 3, her being seizure-free for a little bit, with the help of our doctors, they told us that we could start to wean her off her meds. But we were informed that there would always be a 30% risk of her having a recurring seizure. So she was seizure-free all the way through to age 9, still no meds. And then we moved to North Carolina, got a new doctor, got some more EEGs, had some more conversations, and still didn't hear about SUDEP.
On August the 8th, 2019, is the day everything changed. She was 11. It was also her first day of middle school. She had a seizure in the middle of the night. I found her classic SUDEP position. Didn't know that at the time. And of course, as you all can imagine, we go through all the chaos of, CPR and 911 and everything. Thankfully, which is weird to say, the lead EMS tech, I guess is what you would call him, made the decision to transport and do everything at the end at the hospital so that none of that had to happen in our home. So we got really lucky there.
So the next thing that happened after that, we made calls to the parents of all of Addison's friends. We wanted them to hear that news from us and not from anywhere else. We then made a Facebook post, and the girl that spent a large amount of time on TikTok would have been happy to know that her Facebook post went viral. We decided we didn't want a house full of flowers, so we said instead of sending flowers, make a cash donation to this Venmo account, which we didn't even know what it was going to be called or what it was going to go to. And within a couple of days, the account grew to $10,000, over $10,000. And at that moment, Shelley and I kind of looked at each other and said, could we make this something? And if we do, what? So we got together with some very talented, dedicated friends. As Liam Neeson would say, they had a very specific set of skills to officially create the Addison Hutchison Foundation. We had a mission statement, we had a slogan, and then we had our logo, which is the turtle. The question I get asked very often is, why the turtle? And I will tell you, it's because when Addison was alive, we were in Target, and she came up to me with a pack of metal straws. Dad, can I have some metal straws? No, Addison, we don't need metal straws. We don't use straws. But Dad, the plastic straws are bad for the turtles. Addison, we're still not getting the metal straws. Dad, why do you hate the turtles? We got the straws, and then we got the turtle logo. So our first initiative, or our first fundraising initiative, actually wasn't even our idea. One of her gymnastic teammates came up with the idea to have shirts printed that say, "This is my handstand shirt," upside down. She did that all on her own. All the proceeds went to our foundation. The first thing that we did for the community was during COVID, we decided that we would provide lunches or meals and supplies to the underserved kids of her elementary school. And that grew to the middle school and the high school and another elementary school. And by the time school let out, we were giving 118 bags of food and supplies every week to kids throughout our community. We also gave out the Grit and Grin Award, which went to an award for a graduating elementary schooler and a graduating middle schooler, and we do that every year. And our ultimate goal when we first started was to grant a scholarship to a student in her graduating class, which will be this year. Along the way, we also helped with youth camps, technology fees, lunch balances, and even a science lab. Our first actual fundraiser was a golf tournament that was very successful, and we raised over $25,000.
Also during this time, it took, months to get an autopsy report back, and when we finally did, it actually did say SUDEP on it. So that floored me. I didn't understand. As you can see, we dealt with this since she was born. So I just chose to dig in because I've had this immense amount of mom guilt. What did I miss? How did we get to here? What did I miss? So I just dug in. I tried to understand the language in the autopsy report. It was complex, and I had to loop in a lot of different people to try to help me. Went to her pediatrician, got her entire medical file, sat days combing through things. What did I miss? What happened? Still couldn't come up with anything. But through a lot of these connections, I was able to make a connection to a pediatric neurology team in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, who I was able to present Addison's story to them. So one day it was to the doctors, a different day it was to the nurses, and there were a lot of questions from them, but at the same time, they were appreciative of the conversation because it allowed them to marinate on the story and take it back and then reassess their own patients and how they can care and talk to them and their caregivers. So that helped. Meanwhile, through that whole piece, I didn't know about Pay Me. I didn't know about Danny Did. I didn't know about anything. We didn't have a whole bunch of these resources near us. So through digging in, I discovered Danny Did, discovered Pay Me, reached out, tried to make connections, ended up in Chicago, what year was that, 2020, at our first Pay Me. And through that, we also learned about what SUDEP Action Day was and those things, and we did, because of COVID times, couldn't really do a whole lot. We did do various fundraisers on social media, one being, we called it Swing for SUDEP, so people would post their swing, and then at that time, people would make donations, and that became a fundraiser. And so then we also met with Epilepsy Alliance of North Carolina and started a project with them.
So we continued to grow. We had social media campaigns, Giving Tuesday, all that stuff. We had help from a lot of friends and some local businesses. We ended up giving away several gymnastics scholarships. We sponsored Girls on the Run. We put eight teams in 8 different schools that did not have them in our area. We also sponsored the Girls Who Code. Shelley has been really involved with the Pay Me Research Journal Club. And all this has allowed us to have open discussions with people who know our story and want to talk to us about epilepsy. And our newest fundraiser is we have partnered with one of our local breweries. Allows people to donate, buy a drink, and donate $1 to the Addison Hutchison Foundation.
So through all of this, there's lots of various lessons learned. Most importantly is, as a bereaved individual, parent, spouse, doesn't matter, be kind to yourself. You've heard the speakers earlier talk about the various ways of navigating grief. In the beginning, I had my foot on the gas pedal. I wanted to move a mountain, and that was great, and I was afraid to take my foot off that gas pedal because I thought I was going to lose momentum until I realized I need to breathe, and I had to take a break. And it's okay to not do that fundraiser, and it's okay to be quiet. It's okay to tap in for somebody else. It's okay to ask somebody else to do something for you. It's okay to not do anything at all. All of these are okay, because your grief is your grief. Your navigation is your navigation. And as I stand up here and I say this, I have thought to myself, these past 5 years, 6 years, we haven't done enough. We haven't done this, or we haven't done that. Going through this presentation, we've done a lot. We have. We've been super busy. But it's made me feel good, but it's also made me have to take a step back and go, I need to press pause. I need to get myself grounded. I need to get myself into therapy. I need to do the things for me so that I can do the things for her. Okay.
I mean, I can go ahead and pass that.
Well, it's fine. I mean, you don't have to have a nonprofit. You don't have to start a nonprofit. I'll go back to what I said earlier. There weren't a lot of resources, a lot of groups near us. Must be something in our region where doctors don't talk. So, yes, we did feel like we needed to do something, and that's the momentum we had. But at the same time, you don't have to do that. There's plenty of other nonprofits. There's plenty of other organizations that you can tap into. You can get involved. You don't even have to fundraise. You can be a part of, a research journal club. You can, raise your hand. Like, there's plenty of us in the room. Tap into anybody.
Last thing, especially for the people that this is your first time here, PAMI is an amazing organization filled with wonderful people. People are ready to help and listen, and you are definitely not alone. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Tara. So my situation's a little bit unique, different from everyone. No, maybe not everyone in here. My daughter had started having seizures in 2021 after 2 COVID vaccine shots. July and August were her first shots, and that December she started having seizures. We went through a year and a half of emergency rooms, primary doctors, to a neurologist doctor. No one once ever mentions epilepsy, let alone SUDEP. We had no idea what had happened. The doctor who did the autopsy told me more than the actual doctor did. After 2 seizures, it's automatic epilepsy. Cassie had had 5 seizures, and the 6th seizure took her on May 1st. We did the EEGs, the MRIs, the scans, the blood work, everything. I was at every single appointment, and no doctor ever once mentioned epilepsy to me. So it was quite a shock when we did get her autopsy report. The day we viewed her at the funeral home, that had said epilepsy was what had taken her. After speaking to the doctor, he had mentioned that everything was perfect with her. Her organs were perfect. There was no other reason other than epilepsy because she was on medication for epilepsy. So until that day, we had never even heard the word. So then my main focus became getting the word out there, getting the word out to parents. Press on. If something is wrong with your child, press on. You as a parent know that something's wrong with your child. You know that something's not right. And if you're not getting the answers that you feel that you should be getting, to press on. SUDEP, epilepsy, seizures. There's so many different kinds and so many different families that are unfortunately in the positions that we're in, and my story hopefully will get out there. Our stories will hopefully get out there and help families that are going through or have been through what we're going through. In the first year, I had written a book. It basically tells her story of growing up, how she was healthy growing up, everything that she did, everything that we did, up to the doctor's appointments, the things that the doctors did and didn't do, and kind of led us on our journey that we're on here today. Her favorite thing was a Jeep. She was trying to save money for Jeeps, so we ducked Jeeps as much as we can with little business, like little cards going to her Facebook page that gives information about seizures, that gives information about epilepsy, SUDEP, everything that a lot of people don't even know or aren't even sure of. Also the painted rocks. My daughter-in-law come up with the idea of painting rocks, so we do that, kind of leave that around, go on vacations, go on cruises, whatever. We take the rocks and we distribute those, and I've got a lot of followers from that. Again, it's just trying to get the word out there and get people to understand that epilepsy is something that is a little bit more than what we know, knowledge-wise. We do fundraisers, events. She was a manager at the Dairy Queen in our local town, and we do spirit nights there in March and in July for her birthday. And then we also do a foundation dinner every November. All the proceeds go to the college that she was going to, which is, again, a local college. She was going to be a vet tech. So that goes to the vet tech to put someone through school as scholarships to pay for their books, whatever the student needs. It's just trying to get the word out there, trying to help people like us and hope that they don't go down the road that we go down. Again, I wrote the book. It helped. We're in a parade that promotes the dinner every year, just to try to get more people in, draw more people in. And we have helped some people in our community get into the right doctors, get into emotional support groups, things like that. And that's where we are. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maddie, and I really respect when people can go off the cuff, but I have like pages that I'm going to read off of because I can't not. So I'm here to honor my older sister, Kate. So this is Kate. She died in January of 2022 from SUDEP, despite a clear neurological workup just months prior, which I think sounds very similar to most people in this room. She lived very healthfully. She was fully medicated. Her seizures were relatively controlled, and they were nocturnal. Kate was this quirky, fun-loving, warm-spirited, just like vibrant, and if you meet my siblings and my parents, this won't shock you, just would give you this like big bear hug that was like mostly inappropriate at times, but just was a really big spirit. And she worked hard to understand her challenges. You know, she had a lot of, I think when you're having that many seizures, some things developmentally can be a little bit delayed, and she really wanted to understand her differences and her challenges. She found a lot of comfort in the epilepsy community through support groups and activities and friendships, and she would always remember the smallest kind of awkward details about people, and she would bring them up when she saw them, which is just like it's the funniest thing. She'd say like, oh, I remember in high school when you had a cat that ran away or whatever. So there are 4 kids in our family. I'm the youngest. Kate and her twin brother, Johnny, are in the middle, and our oldest brother, Charlie, and growing up, we always knew that she had her own set of challenges, but like a lot of families, like we were siblings, and you fight, and you don't think about that conversation before you get on a plane could be your last conversation, and none of us really understood how catastrophic epilepsy can be. I think you just think, that thing won't happen to us. It sort of is this nightmare that you live. Like I said, her seizures were nocturnal. They were controlled, and we assumed that those facts meant that what happened wouldn't happen. But if you're in this room, you know that safety is deceptive when it comes to epilepsy, that grief can really just flip your life upside down overnight. But I've also found that it can push me or push you towards understanding. It's pushed me toward a need for clarity and purpose in a way. It sort of ignited in me this determination to understand SUDEP and to want to see progress and to know that doctors are understanding it more and that it's being talked about. And like we've mentioned, it's slow, but I am hopeful that having these conversations and talking about it is at least a step in the right direction. So obviously we can never unhear that phone call that we all got in the middle of the night, and it doesn't bring Kate back. But if there's one thing that I can do to help with the pain and to make sure that other families aren't going through this, or connect with families that have gone through it, I think that's huge, and again, just feels like one small step. Similarly to a lot of the people in this room, the first year after she died, I really couldn't think. I feel like, I got 4 weeks off from my job for bereavement, and then I went back, and it felt like those weeks had just evaporated, and life kept moving forward. You still have to do things. My husband and I were living in California at the time, and we moved back to Chicago. I joined a sort of trauma grief group that I sort of just went through the motions. I feel like it was all just a fog. But eventually I found a way to honor Kate, and I think that became sort of how I coped and how I have tried to come to terms with like the fact that this is our reality and that she did have epilepsy and that this did in fact happen to us. I think for a while your brain lives in like, oh, like, that's not real. So I ran the Chicago Marathon for Special Olympics, which was and the picture in the middle is, I had run it in 2019 and fundraised for Special Olympics, and that is Kate in the middle with me, and then the pictures on the outside are in later years. But she, in recent years, had been really involved with Special Olympics Chicago. She's very athletic, so I think she found a great community there, and I decided I wanted to fundraise. I had not heard of Danny Did Foundation at that time, and I raised about $17,000 in her honor, which sits in a fund that keeps the Eternal Flame of Hope running in Chicago, which is this monument that it's a flame that runs all year round, and it honors the flame lit for the Special Olympics in Athens, but it's a permanent monument that sort of symbolizes hope and inclusion and unity for people with disabilities. So for me, finding something that wasn't just about epilepsy, but honored other pieces of Kate that she liked and really leaned into, I wanted to sort of find other ways to honor her that were reflective of her spirit. Kate was also a teacher's aide at a school in the suburb of Chicago, an elementary school, and the kids just adored her. They created the buddy bench in her honor because she really just was everybody's buddy. And in our homes, you'll find butterflies everywhere, these little reminders that she's still with us. And sometimes it's hard to connect with that, and it sort of feels like, you know intellectually that that's how we connect with Kate, but it's sometimes hard to actually feel her in those moments. But they're everywhere, regardless. In the fall of 2024, so last fall, I had my daughter, and becoming a mom honestly changed everything for me. The responsibility and the fear and the desire to protect. And it sort of lit up this sense of urgency for me around epilepsy education and SUDEP awareness. And it made it even more clear to me that there is such a gap among medical professionals and friends and family, and I wanted to continue to channel my grief into something that could help people. So I got in touch with Danny Did, or they got in touch with me, I don't remember, but I finally decided I was ready to, or not ready, but willing to take that step and sort of face what was going on. So as I think everyone knows, Danny Did's work gives families what we didn't have, the knowledge and tools, and I guess sense of control in a space that doesn't have any predictability and, sudden, unexplained like it's all just, it's so scary when you hear those words put together. And I appreciate that you guys are reducing fear by talking about it and helping create an understanding. So I think that's the last picture that I have, but that's my daughter. I tapped out at mile 6, actually, so I didn't finish the marathon, but I had just had a baby. You know, I tried, but that is exactly where I tapped out, was when I saw my daughter. Yeah, still got it. But yeah, so it was a lot of fun, and I think my hope is to continue to do things like that. And Kate didn't know about Danny Did Foundation, I don't think, and so there's a little bit of a disconnect there. You know, I wish she knew just how the work that you guys are doing, but I think if there's one thing that I can still do for her, it's speak for her and, you know, run for her, breathe for her, all of these things. And I want to help amplify a message that, certainly to medical professionals, that families deserve the transparency and to know the risks and preventative tools and seizure detection devices or seizure detection dogs, whatever it might be. It's clear that the conversation isn't happening, and I think it's a hard one to have, because how do you say, like, you talking about mortality is like, I don't know how you do that and then during a doctor's appointment and then walk out. So I think just having the conversation is really important. It safeguards families, and I think information just continues to empower all of us and honor our loved ones. Before I close, I want to share my take-home message with you. Continue to talk about this. It's kind of awkward because it's like, who wants to talk about dying and death and the possibility of dying, the possibility of death? It doesn't sit well with people. How do you live knowing that this thing could happen? But doctors, nurses, and researchers, I think they need to acknowledge it, and we as families can't prevent something that we don't know exists. So I think the transparency isn't fear-mongering, it's just, it can save a life. I really do believe that, and thanks for letting me share Kate with you, and I hope that you guys enjoy the rest of the conference.
I just want to thank all of our panelists, kind of like Maddie just said, you know, myself as a person living with epilepsy, I'm just always so inspired by everyone here talking about their loved ones, sharing their stories, and using that. That inspires me to keep doing this work, and why I'm so passionate about it, because I was not educated about SUDEP. I forced my doctors to talk about it over the years. So thank you for sharing your stories and what you're doing, and thank you all for being here, because as was said, we're all here. I think Shelley said it. We can work together to continue elevating the discussion around SUDEP, around mortality, because it's not just SUDEP. There's other mortalities that happen due to epilepsy, and I see nodding. So thank you all for being here. I know we're a little over time, but I do want to allow for at least 1 or 2 questions, because we have enough time, and got to get Mary back on her feet too. And we have enough time that we can, you know, stretch it a little bit. So if we have 1 or 2 questions, I see a hand right up here, Mary.
Thank you, Mary. Well, I don't know what to say. In the beginning, I almost got up, took my purse and left, because myself recently, not from SUDEP, but losing very close niece a month ago, but it's not SUDEP. But then the other reason I wanted to leave was because I have been battling epilepsy, 2 brain surgeries, implant, and hearing you talk about it and that it can happen to me put the fear, and to hear you say that you have and how strong you are, and I just respect your strength. It's encouraging me to go further with the activities that I do. I'm a board member with the Epilepsy Community Advisory Board at Morehouse School of Medicine. I help in the community. From a small hometown, Eatonton, Georgia, so I educated the people there with seizure first aid training, and I want to do as much as I can, and I want you all to know, even with the first group, that you all have really, really encouraged me to continue with the fight that I have. And I want you to continue because I'm going to use you as my anchors. I promise. God bless you.
Well, now you're going to make me cry. This is why I wear waterproof mascara. So there's a tip for your next PME, waterproof mascara.
I hope it's okay if I sit. My name is Crystal Gumry, and I actually, part of my job is I review child fatalities in Indiana. A second reason why I'm here is my child has epilepsy, and he was diagnosed, I want to say, 4 years ago. I do know what SUDEP is because of my job, and I hate that I know what it is. But when I've taken my son to his neurologist, he pointed out to me, SUDEPs don't happen that much. Well, to me, one is too many. So, looking back at your experiences, is there anything that you could, any advice you could give other parents besides the one gal who said, just keep pushing? Because when the doctor said, SUDEP doesn't happen that much, I was like, well, I study data. I know you're wrong. So, plus to have, like I said, one fatality is too many because of SUDEP. But how would you, looking forward now, how would you educate parents as to these are the questions you should be asking? You know, part of my job as well is prevention. So we take a fatality and we look from the back going forward. So I would love to be able to share with the stakeholders in my state, you know, how do we bring this to the forefront? Because we study sudden death in the youth, sudden unexpected infant death, SUDEP, all of those things. But how do we bring this to the forefront? Because I'm writing notes to my supervisor as you guys are talking, and I'm like, we know about SUDEP, how does no one else? So how do we get the word out there? How do we kind of come out from behind the curtain?
Unfortunately, I don't think there's any one answer to that. You just, as a parent, not knowing what I was headed for, study more, read more, even if the internet is not right, have those questions ready for the doctor when you go there. Make them answer. If they can't answer, it's one of the things that I didn't push for that I wish I would have. He wasn't really giving me defined answers. He never mentioned epilepsy. Since it's happened, of course, I research everything. I question everything. So read the research, even if it's incorrect, ask the doctors, push to get answers. As parents and as wives and as sisters of whoever has epilepsy or these unfortunate seizures, we have to advocate for them. Unfortunate, we are trying to advocate for families that have not lost their loved ones to this. So I think that's the biggest part of why we're here, is trying to push people to get the knowledge, because it's just not out there.
I would certainly challenge the physician with certain questions. You know, if your physician said, oh, well, one is not that many. Okay, well, tell me more about that. What do you think? How do you drive to that thought process? Challenge them to challenge themselves. There's also, there's a toolkit. We do have a toolkit.
Yeah, I was going to say there's little cards on the table at the registration table. It's called the Sparks Toolkit on how to have the discussion, and Sparks, each letter stands for something that's escaping me at the moment, but it's how to have that empathetic, compassionate conversation around SUDEP or, epilepsy mortality with patients. So you can grab one of those cards, share it with your provider, and it goes through those questions to specifically ask, and that provider should be asking as well, to Shelley's point.
I think, I know that, I'm in a little bit of a different situation, but my mom, I think I would say my mom was pretty bullish, as I think every parent is, about from when Kate was born to, when she passed, about seeing doctors across the country, kind of trying to understand what was going on. Kate eventually wanted to live independently, and I think my mom lost that fight at some point, and Kate got to live independently. But I think doctors should say, okay, if that's your plan, how do we make sure that you're armed? Do you have a detection device so that we can tell, are you having nocturnal seizures, and then not knowing because you're not living with your parents? I think there's sort of this decision tree that, I don't know if this isn't making sense, but I think at some point doctors are sort of just like, we can't control it. So, and I think even if you are really bullish about it and you're a very hands-on parent, I think, I don't know, there's part of it that's like you can't control it, and some of this is just really unfortunate, but just continuing to push and ask the questions. Like, I wish I had known more. I knew how to handle a seizure because we shared a bedroom. I knew how to handle, when she had them at night, but I didn't know, I don't know, if she said she had a headache in the morning, I didn't know to ask, like, hey, did you maybe have a seizure? Like, I think that's sort of just a rant, but just asking the questions, and they're uncomfortable, but yeah, that doesn't give you much to work with, but.
Is this on? I also suggest leaning on resources from Epilepsy Foundation, Cure Epilepsy, Danny Did Foundation, PAMI, checking their website as well, for toolkits, for checklists that you can bring to the office. To answer a doctor who says the risk is low, or, okay, so there is a risk, so now I want to talk about it. And how can I keep my loved ones safer? How can I keep myself safer? And what are ways that I can reduce the amount of seizures I'm having too? There's a whole checklist of, hey, have I seen all the specialists I need to see within diet, sleep? Am I seeing an epileptologist? Is there a surgeon? Should I have a surgery specialist look into my case? So there's a lot of ways to try to mitigate that risk. We really empower families to bring this up. We're working both ends. We want the doctors to, and we encourage them as well, but in case it's not happening in your doctor's office, you deserve it for yourself, the woman who shared with us, or for your loved one to stand up and ask those questions, and as the panelists have said, push. And thank you for the work you do.
Last thing, and then we'll let you go on your break before the last session. Like Mary said, even after the fact, having that follow-up conversation with your provider or healthcare team to let them know, like, hey, my loved one passed away. We didn't talk about this. You need to talk about this, and share those resources that are available. We're here to support you, to have those conversations, to share those resources. If you're not comfortable talking to your provider and having those follow-up conversations, we can help you have those conversations, because it's by continuing to have these conversations, like we've all said, that, that change happens. Like we had that question from that couple, are things changing? So, we are here even after something happens to go back to those providers being like, this is why it should be talked about. And, there are providers that are open to these conversations. They will all be here tomorrow having these conversations around this topic. So, if you are looking to follow up or anything like that, I know families that have, we can put you in touch, and building that community in that way as well. So on that note, we want to give you a break before we start our networking roundtables. So we're a little over time, but we will give you a little bit longer than 5 minutes because we held you over. So if you come back here at 4:40, and then we will start the networking roundtables. Just listen for the chime and we will get started. So thank you, everyone.